Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Drive District. What's your take on automatic transmissions? Do you trust them? Or do you see them as expensive repairs waiting to happen? Something you tolerate simply because they're more comfortable to drive? Today, I'm going to show you which automatic transmissions, and the vehicles they come in, have truly earned a reputation for reliability. We're focusing on classic 6-speed hydraulic automatic transmissions. For this list, I've picked 5 transmissions for front-wheel drive platforms with transverse-mounted engines, and 5 for rear-wheel drive platforms with longitudinal-mounted engines. I consider every transmission on this list to be exceptionally reliable, so I'm not ranking them from best to worst. After all, when you buy a car, the manufacturer rarely lets you choose between different automatic transmissions anyway. Before we dive in, here's a quick overview of how these gearboxes actually work. Most hydraulic automatics with the same number of gears are surprisingly similar in design, much like modern engines. Instead of traditional gear pairs, they use planetary gear sets to create the different gear ratios. Those gear sets are controlled by multi-plate clutch packs and brake packs, which engage or hold specific components of the planetary assembly to produce each gear. The clutch packs are applied by hydraulic pressure supplied through the valve body. Inside the valve body are spool valves operated by electronic solenoids. Those solenoids are controlled by the transmission control module, which constantly monitors input speed, output speed, fluid temperature, hydraulic pressure, and other operating parameters. Every conventional automatic transmission also includes a parking mechanism consisting of a parking gear and a parking pole. The torque converter, which connects the engine to the transmission, locks up in virtually every forward gear under the right conditions. In some situations, it allows a controlled amount of slip, but once locked, it behaves almost like a manual transmission clutch, creating a direct mechanical connection between the engine and the gearbox. On front-wheel drive vehicles with a transverse engine layout, the transmission housing also contains the final drive and differential, both of which share the same automatic transmission fluid. Another important detail: on most modern transverse-mounted automatics, the internal ATF filter is buried deep inside the transmission case. Replacing it usually requires completely disassembling the transmission, not something you can do during a routine fluid service. Now let's get to the first transmission on today's list, one of the oldest and still one of the most reliable. 6-speed transverse automatics is the Aisin TF-80SC. Between 2003 and 2011, this transmission found its way into vehicles from almost every major European manufacturer, including Peugeot, Citroën, Ford, Renault, Volvo, and Saab. Although they all carry the TF-80SC name, they're not all interchangeable. For example, the Opel version uses its own unique valve body. Like most long-lasting automatic transmissions, the TF-80SC usually doesn't fail because of a design flaw. It eventually wears out with age. The first major component to show significant wear is typically the torque converter lockup clutch. That's exactly why regular fluid changes are so important. If you want this transmission to last, replace the ATF every 60,000 to 80,000 kilometers instead of waiting for problems to appear. Let's move on to another excellent Aisin transmission, the TF-60SN. This is the 6-speed automatic that Volkswagen Group specifically commissioned for its own vehicles. Within the VW lineup, it's better known by its internal designation, 09G. Despite the similar name, this isn't a simplified version of the TF-80SC. It's a completely different transmission with its own design. Compared to the TF-80SC, it's calibrated for quicker, sportier shifts and a more responsive driving feel. That aggressive calibration came with a downside though. Early versions built between 2003 and 2006 could wear prematurely if driven hard. The planetary gear bushings, and even the planetary gears themselves, were known to suffer from excessive wear. As the torque converter lockup clutch wore down, contaminated ATF often contained not only friction material, but also fine metal particles, especially the yellow-colored bronze from the bushings. Fortunately, Aisin updated the 09G in 2006, improving both its calibration and durability. Since then, it's become a genuinely long-lasting transmission. Just like the TF-80SC, I recommend changing the ATF every 80,000 kilometers, or even sooner if the vehicle sees heavy use. Now I have to mention another outstanding Aisin transmission that's found in Toyota and Lexus vehicles. I'm talking about the U760E family and its close relative, the U660E. Toyota has always demanded exceptionally durable automatic transmissions, and these are no exception. To be fair, the earliest versions built roughly between 2006 and 2009 had a few typical first-generation issues. But once those problems were addressed, these transmissions proved to be incredibly reliable. With proper maintenance, 400,000 kilometers is a very realistic expectation. The key is simple: don't let old contaminated ATF stay in the transmission. Perform regular drain and fill services, or if your budget allows, have the transmission fluid completely exchanged using a professional fluid exchange machine. Now let's talk about Jatco. Jatco has built some truly impressive automatic transmissions over the years. Since the company is closely tied to Nissan, you'll find the durable JF613E behind Nissan engines ranging from 2.0 to 3.5 liters. Before Mitsubishi switched many of its models to CVTs, this same transmission was used in the Lancer and Outlander, where it's known by the code F6AJA. Renault also used it behind engines from 2.0 to 3.5 liters, calling it the AJO. The Jatco JF613E is a well-built transmission with an excellent safety margin. Introduced in 2006, it's actually newer than the Aisin TF-8 OSC. Its internal design is slightly simpler, and its shift programming is noticeably smoother and more relaxed. Now let's move on to Hyundai. One transmission family that absolutely deserves a place on this list is Hyundai's A6 series. In fact, if we're talking about 6-speed transverse automatics, these are essentially the standard transmissions found across the Hyundai and Kia lineup. The A6 family debuted in 2009. Hyundai developed several versions to handle engines ranging from 1.6 to 3.8 liters. Overall, they're excellent long-life transmissions. Yes, the earliest production years had a few typical teething problems, and many of those issues were resolved under warranty. Once those early bugs were worked out, the A6 became one of the most dependable 6-speed automatics on the market. And finally, I'm sure many of you have been waiting for me to talk about ZF. Don't worry, I wasn't going to leave them out. While ZF stepped away from developing transverse 6-speed automatics during the 2000s, they absolutely dominated the market for longitudinal transmissions. The legendary ZF6HP family has earned an outstanding reputation, especially the later versions like the 6HP21, 6HP28, and 6HP32. These transmissions powered everything from BMW to Bentley, Maserati, Ford, Jaguar, and many other premium vehicles. They're proof that a performance-oriented automatic transmission can also be remarkably durable. In other words, if you're looking at a non-Japanese vehicle with a longitudinally mounted engine and a conventional 6-speed automatic, chances are it's equipped with a ZF6HP. How long these transmissions last before needing a rebuild depends on 3 things: proper maintenance, how much power they're asked to handle, and of course, how the driver treats them. But with regular servicing, it's completely realistic to expect 300,000 kilometers or more from virtually any member of the 6HP family. Another advantage is that the transmission filter is serviceable. Depending on the version, it's either integrated into the transmission pan or mounted directly behind it, making replacement much easier than on many transverse automatics. Now let's move on to one of the toughest Japanese automatics ever built, the Aisin TB-60SN, also known as the A760E. This transmission was engineered to handle powerful V8 engines in rear-wheel drive and four-wheel drive Toyota and Lexus models. It also found its way into the Jeep Liberty, the first-generation Hyundai Genesis, and even the Mazda RX-8. Honestly, there's only one reliable way to destroy this transmission. Ignore maintenance. Never change the fluid. Never replace the filter. Let it overheat. Do that, and eventually it will fail. Otherwise, it's one of the strongest automatic transmissions Aisin has ever produced. Speaking of Aisin, there's another special transmission that deserves a place on this list. When Volkswagen Group developed the first Porsche Cayenne, Volkswagen Touareg, and Audi Q7, they turned to Aisin for a heavy-duty automatic. The result was the TR-60SN, known inside Volkswagen Group as the 09D. It entered production in 2003. A few years later, around 2007 to 2009, Toyota and Lexus began using this transmission as well. The TR-60SN is incredibly durable and has a huge safety margin. However, at Volkswagen's request, Ising calibrated it for much quicker, sportier shifting. That makes the transmission more enjoyable to drive, but it also puts a little more stress on the internal components. Even so, especially after the updates introduced around 2005, it's hard to find anything serious to complain about. The final two transmissions on today's list aren't 6 speeds at all. They're both 7-speed automatics. The first is Jatco's RE7R01A. It entered production in 2009 and was designed for engines ranging from 2.5 all the way up to 5.6 liters. If you own a larger Nissan or almost any Infiniti equipped with this transmission, you really don't have much to worry about. The RE7R01A regularly exceeds 300,000 kilometers with proper maintenance. Better yet, it was a success right from the beginning. There were no major first-generation issues to speak of. That's no surprise, since it was developed from the already excellent RE5R05 A5-speed automatic. So what's the other 7-speed transmission that made the list? Of course, it's Mercedes-Benz's legendary 7G-Tronic, also known by its internal designation 722.9. No, it's not completely flawless. Early versions did suffer from problems with the electronic conductor plate. The good news is that this issue has long since become well understood, and today it's relatively inexpensive to repair. Overall, the 7G-Tronic has proven itself to be an exceptionally reliable transmission. You'll often hear about them needing repairs, but that's mainly because Mercedes paired them with both gasoline and diesel engines, making them far more common than the Japanese transmissions we've talked about today. Naturally, the more vehicles on the road, the more repair stories you'll hear. Many of these transmissions simply reach 300,000 kilometers or more before ever needing major work. The same is true for the ZF6HP family. In my opinion, the 7G-Tronic is one more reason to have confidence in modern Mercedes-Benz vehicles. Another advantage shared by every longitudinal transmission we've discussed is easy filter service. Once you remove the transmission pan, you can replace the ATF filter and drain a significant amount of the oil fluid at the same time. Just remember, changing the fluid every 80,000 kilometers, or even sooner under severe use, is only part of the equation. You also need to keep the transmission cooler clean. An overheated automatic transmission is a short-lived automatic transmission. And that's my list. Now it's your turn. Do you agree with these picks? Which automatic transmissions would make your own top? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, ring the notification bell and subscribe to Drive District. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.